Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick2. Today I'm going to be going over everything that you guys need to know in order to successfully obliterate the entire game on the Andariel's Visage Barrage rogue build. That was a bit of a tongue twister. Before I get into anything, I want to give huge credit to Mippy as well as Sanctum D4 for doing a lot of the heavy lifting, a lot of the math, and figuring stuff out so that I didn't really have to. So big thanks to them. Credit will be given to them in the description. Definitely make sure to check them out. I've made some very slight alterations, but nothing too significant, and I'm mainly just here to explain to you guys how the build works and to show you guys my version of it. This build is one of the strongest builds of the season. Damage output is crazy. You can do up to like 6-7 billion per instance of damage, which is really strong. Definitely one of the top 3 builds of the season. It is surprisingly tanky, one of the tankier builds that I've played in recent memory. You can kind of just have this brain dead playstyle of like holding right click. There is a lot of buttons you want to be pressing, but overall it's pretty easy to play, and you have so much survivability that you can't really mess it up. So it's really great for doing like higher tiers of the tier 8 Infernal Horde. You could do high tiers of the pit with it if you wanted to. You can absolutely nuke tormented bosses. Overall, one of the strongest builds of the season, dare I say even the strongest. I'd say Lightning Spear overall is probably stronger, but Andariel's definitely a contender. The only downside is that it has a fairly high gear requirement. Obviously the entirety of the build centers around a mythic unique. I get a whole bunch of comments about, oh my god, normal people can't get mythic uniques. First of all, little tangent here, you can get 4 Resplendent Sparks fairly easily if you just put a little bit of time into the game, and then you can just deterministically buy the Andariels. But regardless, obviously this build isn't going to function without that. So this is with a huge caveat, this build has a fairly high gear requirement. But that's why I made the rapid fire video first. Highly recommend that if you're just getting into Rogue. That build has a super low gear requirement, very strong right out the gate, and you can easily use that while farming the gear for this build. So you have been warned, this build requires a good bit of gear, and I'm going to talk about which gear I'd recommend you get prior to swapping over to it, and also explain to you guys how the build functions and why it might feel a little bit lackluster to you when you first swap to it. But once you get it going, as you can see, it is extremely strong, and it is just, like I said, probably one of the strongest builds of this season. Before I get into things, it is plug time. This video is sponsored by Mobalytics. I highly recommend downloading the desktop app completely for free. All of my builds are posted on here, so one of the benefits if you download the desktop app is that you can actually see builds that I make by just clicking on my profile prior to me uploading them. I actually made like some leveling builds that I didn't even make videos on that are kind of just here, so you could definitely check that out. There's also a tier list, which is great. I personally use this to kind of stay on top of the meta, and when I swap classes or just look around, this is great. A lot of the content creators on here make some pretty quality builds. Highly recommend checking that out. There's a meta build section, so even people that aren't within the tier list, you can find their builds here, and my builds are often frequently featured here. There's a community build section, which you can make your own build and even get it featured here. There's a build planner that you can mess around with and make your own build and kind of have it posted there. One of the main things though is that if you like following my builds, you could just favorite my builds here. You were to favorite them, but I just have them obviously here, and then you can easily copy paste them. So for example, I already have the Andariel's rogue here, so you can tab Q, have this little sidebar here, and then if you want to copy the Paragon board, it has literally never been easier than just having it to the side of your screen, and blah blah blah. You can just look up right there, and you could be, killing a tormented boss and scroll and look at, okay, what do I want on my amulet? You could be masterworking your gear, and all of the information is right here for you. Like, it has never been more convenient to copy paste the build guide than downloading the desktop app and being able to just pop this open at any moment's notice. But again, there's a whole bunch of great builds on here, and I'd highly recommend it for just checking out other builds. And again, literally everything that I will ever make in terms of builds will be posted on here, so make sure to check that out. Getting into the build, I want to briefly explain 1, how it works at a baseline, and 2, what gear you need to actually start to get it set up, because I would not recommend just slapping it on the second that you get Andariel's Visage. You will not have a good time. First of all, the whole thing revolves around Andariel's Visage. The reason that it is so strong is that it has a very high damage proc here, being 115,000 poisoning damage. And the way that poison works, you can very quickly stack this up over and over and over again and get the damage to kind of compound. And that's how you end up in the billions of damage, is just getting a lot of poisoning damage and scaling your generic modifiers. Obviously, this is a lucky hit based thing, so we're using Barrage, which has a fairly decent lucky hit, but you can scale up the attack speed like crazy, so you're attacking very quickly, therefore proccing a lot of lucky hits. And Barrage has the added benefit of ricocheting, so we get more lucky hit procs that way. And then we try to just scale up our lucky hit as much as possible so that we have a guaranteed chance of per Barrage cast to actually get a lucky hit proc. As you can see, I have Fist of Fate with greater affix, lucky hit chance here, and it is full masterworked. Before you guys freak out and comment, oh my god, streamer loot, you have to have the best gear in the game for this build to work. Absolutely not. I played this build with a normal Fist of Fate, although you definitely want to get the masterwork crits on the lucky hit chance, or else the build won't feel great, because the entirety of the build is based around lucky hit. So until you get a decent bit of lucky hit, it's not going to feel great. You're not going to get a whole bunch of those procs and therefore stack the damage up really quickly. But you also need a good amount of attack speed in order to get it to kind of, get the ball rolling. Barrage itself does not actually do any damage. It is simply a vehicle to proc lucky hits, therefore proccing the Andariel's Visage proc. You definitely can set this build up and see some success with it if you decide to swap a little early. However, I would recommend just holding off until you have a decent bit of gear, so then you can easily go into like T7s and actually clear it successfully. So the things I would recommend to have prior to being able to do T7s successfully, obviously Andariel's, and I'd recommend masterworking it to at least 8 out of 12, hoping that 1 or 2 of those masterworks land on attack speed. We'll talk about attack speed later. And then same with Fist of Fate. I'd recommend getting a Fist of Fate with a as high lucky hit chance roll as possible. The bottom stat does not matter. The attack's random deal damage percent. This does not affect Andariel's, so you don't care about that. The crit chance you don't care about that much. The attack speed, you can reach attack speed cap without it, even if it's at a low roll, so that doesn't matter too much either. Try to just get a as high of lucky hit chance roll as possible, and ideally masterwork that. Try to get some of the masterwork crits to land on lucky hit as well. Simply do not set the build up until you at least have those 2 things. Honorable mention would be getting an amulet with alchemical advantage on it, because this is not only going to give you lucky hit chance, but it also gives you attack speed, which will drastically help out. Starless Skies, I'm debating whether or not to say like you should have it prior to setting the build up. You can play with the build without Starless Skies. You're just going to be missing a good bit of lucky hit, and it has a lot of attack speed on it to just easily cap you, and it just gives you a lot of damage too. So if you have the means, I would recommend getting Starless Skies beforehand, but if you are very eager to set the build up, you don't entirely need it. You'll certainly notice a difference though once you actually have it. So that's what I'd recommend to use, or to at least have ready prior to swapping to the build. And in the meantime, again, just use my rapid fire rogue build. That'll be perfectly fine for you. Or I guess you can just get like carried by one of your friends who's playing Lightning Spear Sork or something. When it comes to skills here, we're using Barrage. Main reason for this is we can get very high attack speed for it, so we can just cast constantly. It applies vulnerable for free for us, which is pretty good. And also we get the Ricochet, which helps with our single target significantly, and add clear as well. And it has a pretty decent lucky hit chance, just spamming out a crap ton of arrows per second. Honorable mention is Puncture. Puncture actually has, I think, higher damage potential for the build overall. However, using Puncture is a little bit different in terms of how you set it up, and you don't gain access to Second Wind, so the survivability is significantly worse, I would say, but the damage output is decently higher, just because the lucky hit chance is a little bit higher. So I would recommend checking out Zario's Puncture build if you're interested in just doing as much damage as humanly possible, but overall Barrage is much more well-rounded. We use Shadow Step to proc the Close Quarters Combat key passive and also one of our glyphs. Poison Trap is for 15% damage modifier and 23% in our Paragon Board. Dark Shroud we gain for free via the Umbrous aspect, and this just gives us a lot of damage reduction. Smoke Grenade is simply for a damage increase, 25%, and Poison Imbuement increases our lucky hit chance because we're doing non-physical damage, and we also gain additional damage by just doing non-phys damage via Paragon Board, and also just all of our hits count as non-phys. And we can also use this with one of our legendaries, which increases our lucky hit chance as well. Then we use an ultimate. You can either use Shadow Clone or Death Trap. Death Trap has a lower cooldown, so you could go for Death Trap if you prefer when the build is early on set up. But later on, Shadow Clone is just a little bit nicer because you get unstoppable when you activate it. But we basically need the ultimate for our key passive, which is Preparation, giving us 15% DR. It also is going to reduce all of our cooldowns, so it just is helpful for getting CD resets on stuff. And we also use a Paragon node, which gives us damage increase when we press our ultimate skill, so we want to have one ultimate on our bar. Filtry, these points don't matter. Go into Barrage and go for the Guaranteed Vulnerable. Sturdy, we don't need Siphoning Strike because we heal via Andariel's Visage. And then we go Shadow Step, cooldown reduction, damage reduction from over time. Unstable Elixirs is just extra damage for us. Dark Shroud, max it out and gain the, I had the wrong thing on, gain the heal. We don't care about crit chance or crit damage with this build because Poison does not crit. And then we go for Smoke Grenade. Damn it, I also had the wrong Smoke Grenade thing on. You want the cooldown reduction there. And again, it gives us 25% increased damage. Poison, you want the 15% increased damage while enemies are in it. Exploit, Malice for damage. poison imbuement, and cooldown reduction, we can basically just spam and have our poison imbuement permanently up. So we just get extra lucky hit chance, which is nice. And then we also deal extra poison damage. Alchemical advantage is crazy, gives us attack speed on a separate cap, and it gives us lucky hit chance. Frigid finesse for damage against frozen. Innervation. Second one is crazy for survivability. Innervation is basically how we generate a lot of our energy because we have such high lucky hit chance. Early on into the build, you could swap points out of Rugged and go into Innervation if you don't have the Umbercrux and you're having issues with energy. Shadow Clone, and just we grab the Unstoppable. Shadow Clone doesn't do any damage for us. We are just using it for the proc. And then we go close quarters combat. This gives us not only attack speed, but also a damage increase, and we are proccing this solely through Shadow Step. The reason that I do not go dash is because I just prefer to go Shadow Step, Smoke Grenade, and we are able to proc our Fluidity Glyph and close quarters combat just by using Shadow Step. If you want to have more uptime or something, or you just want to have more movement speed, feel free to just swap out Smoke Grenade for dash. When it comes to legendaries and uniques, there isn't too much to talk about on the two-hander. You want to have Creeping Death. This increases your damage against bosses by 80%, or just 40% for each different crowd control enemies are affected by. They can be affected by a ton because our Fists of Fate have the chance to apply a random crowd control effect. I believe there's 8 crowd controls in the game, and if you have really high lucky hit, you could realistically apply that to one elite mob. Ideally, you'd have a higher roll than I have. My lucky hit chance to apply CC is pretty low, unfortunately. That generally just helps with your mobbing, but for bossing, that isn't going to help you all that much. On your amulet, I would recommend having Branching Volleys. Technically, this could be conceded as well, but Branching Volleys is just overall really good. It'll increase your clear speed. It just gives your barrage arrows a 90% chance to ricochet and then split into more arrows, so you just get more lucky hit procs. On single target, this is really good because you can put the Umbercrux totem down, and then you can shoot the totem, and then you can have the ricochet off of the totem. But also when you're clearing, you can shoot one mob and then have it ricocheting to another mob, and then you get more ricochets, therefore more lucky hit procs, which is really good. On your ring, you want to have high velocity. This is just an attack speed increase for barrage. That's really good. And then on your weapon, there are 2 options. Bursting Venoms. Anecdotally, I've noticed for bossing, this is really good. The reason that you use this isn't just for poison imbuement to keep it up all the time, because you can do that once the build is perfectly set up anyways. This kind of just gives you a separate lucky hit proc, so you can stack up your Andariels a little bit faster, and therefore get more damage. Personally, I've seen higher damage numbers while using it, but you could argue for conceded aspect being a little bit more well-rounded. And then we go for the Umbercrux totem. While you're mobbing, Umbercrux isn't really going to help you out that much. It's mainly for bossing, but it does give you ranks to Innervation, which will help out with your energy a lot. It's very, very good for bossing, though, especially because it's bugged with other classes, making your modifiers benefit them, so then you can kind of just like one-shot bosses. If you want, you can have a separate weapon that just has conceded aspect on it and swap to that when you are just doing the Infernal Hordes and mobbing. Or you can just keep the Umbercrux. It's not really much of a downside, and it's kind of fun to just like throw down the totem and just lay into it if you're feeling a little bit lazy. Obviously, we go for Starless Skies. This is a 50% damage increase, and it has pretty good stats on it. Until you get Starless Skies, you could use a normal ring and use the Starlight aspect, which gives you resource based on when you heal. And that will help with your resource, and then again, make sure you put more points into Innervation. Obviously, we want Fist of Fate. Again, we are only using this for the high lucky hit and the lucky hit chance to apply a crowd control. The bottom effect does not affect our Andariels. On the boots, we go for this. This is a 35% damage modifier. On the pants, we go for Umbra so that we generate a Dark Shroud via our lucky hit, so we permanently have that damage reduction, which is really good. Obviously, we have Andariels, don't need to talk about that. And on the chest, we have Tyrael's Might. This is just going to cap our resistances for free and gives us a ton of damage reduction. Definitely recommend getting this. It just is like a powerhouse of a survivability item. So you get this, I guess you could use like concussive strikes or something, but your resistances are going to be all messed up, and I kind of wouldn't recommend swapping the build until you have this probably. You could do it, you could figure out resistances and stuff, it'll just be a little bit annoying. I might figure out in the planner, I might not. Let's talk about stats on gear and how you want to masterwork stuff, and then I'll talk about attack speed breakpoints. On your Andariels, you either want 1 or 2 masterwork crits to land on attack speed. It depends on your Fist of Fate roll. Talk about that when we talk about attack speed breakpoints. Alternatively, you could get all stats or max poison res. Not going to make a significant difference there, and the life on hit is kind of insignificant because you'll pretty much instantly full heal anyways because you have so much attack speed. Tyrael's Might, you want it to land on 2 on damage reduction, 1 on maximum resistance. On your Fist of Fate, full send lucky hit chance. On the pants, you want Dex, max HP, armor. In order to reach armor cap, you have to have armor on your pants and have the pants nearly full masterworked. Doesn't have to land into armor though, just fully masterworked so it has the extra stats, and then get royal gems. Armor cap's 9230, so I'm 200 above it, so just make sure you're at 9230. And then you want to temper lucky at chance to freeze for our Fridge of Finesse, and +4 to second wind. I'd recommend having one of the masterworks land in second wind, just a whole bunch of survivability there. The other masterworks, either max HP or dexterity, based on preference if you want damage or health. And then keep in mind, based on your HP, you could swap out gems from dexterity to rubies and vice versa, based on just how you're feeling overall, if you want more survivability or you want more damage. Honestly, you don't really need much more than like 35k HP to kind of be invincible with this build, as long as you have +4 to second wind and you have a good materials. On your boots, Dex, max HP, and dodge chance. You could also swap dodge chance to movement speed if you prefer to be a little bit faster. And then movement speed temper, and then you want lucky at chance to to stun. Actually, I think is a little bit better. You're already applying daze with smoke grenade, so having stun is nice because you get another modifier with creeping death here on a bit more of a consistent basis. And then obviously you want noxious ice on there. On your two-hander, you want to have a bow because a bow has a faster attack speed than a crossbow does, and you want it to be Dex, max HP, damage over time. GA probably on Dex or max HP, probably Dex. It's like Dex or max HP is just really what you want if you want more damage or survivability. And then you want chance for barrage projectiles to cast twice and damage per dark shroud. When you add up your one-hander and your two-hander, you want that to be the chance for projectiles to cast twice. You want that to be as close to 100% as possible. So make sure your masterworks land to where that adds up to about 100%. Mine is a little bit off, so I'd want another one to land on my two-hander. And then you want the rest to go into damage per dark shroud. That is just a lot of damage for us. So you pretty much want the same thing on your one-hander: Dex, max HP, damage over time, projectiles, and damage per dark shroud shadow. On your Umbercrux, stats are pretty much irrelevant. I guess you want all of it to go into dexterity, like for your masterworks, but it's a really insignificant damage increase there. Try to get GA on Dex, I guess. And then if you wanted a different weapon, you would just have exactly the same thing as your other one-hander, which is what I have here. And you'd want all the GA or masterworks to land into damage per dark shroud shadow, because you already have 100% by virtue of just having another weapon. On your ring, you want to have Dex, lucky at chance, and you can either go max HP or damage over time, up to you there. And then you want to temper poison imbued lasts for extra casts, and you probably want all of your masterworks here to go into damage per dark shroud shadow, and you want to have high velocity on there. For your Starless, full send the lucky hit chance, you have enough attack speed. Core skill ranks doesn't do anything for us, and crit chance does not do anything for us either. On your Amulet, you want to have alchemical advantage and Fridge of Finesse. These are the single best things that you can get on your Amulet. Alchemical gives you not only lucky hit chance, but also attack speed. Fridge of Finesse is 10% damage per point, although it does not apply to bosses. Alternative to Fridge of Finesse, Trick Attacks is quite good. 6% damage per rank isn't too bad. Or you could get Dexterity percent is decent. Another one that is decent would be Malice. Just damage to vulnerable enemies is okay too. When we temper, you actually want to temper ultimate cooldown reduction, just so that your ultimate is slightly lower cooldown. Honestly, really does not matter. And damage per Dark Shroud Shadow, just make sure you get the damage. Now that we're looking at the Amulet, this is a good time to talk about attack speed breakpoints. If I were to be at just one more rank of alchemical advantage, if my masterwork were to hit +6, I would be in the next attack speed breakpoint, or I'd hit the next breakpoint. Therefore, I would have, it would be 11 frames per barrage cast rather than costing me 12 frames. So I think I'd attack about 12% faster as the math there. I'll go over the frame calculator here and how you guys can use it. I'll leave a link to this in the description. Credit, this is made by Sanctum, so big credit to him, and also special thanks to Ava for actually finding these breakpoints specifically for Barrage. The way that you can use this yourself is you just go here, file, make a copy. It's pretty easy though. Basically there are two different caps. It's very easy to cap out and get 100% in cap 1 here. This is via 25.4% with your Ring of Starless Skies when it is full masterworked, and then you get any amount from your Fist of Fate is perfectly fine, usually, as long as you just have a decent attack speed roll on your Andariel's Visage. So as you can see here, I'll just go over how this works. So you get a tiny bit from your Paragon Board, you get a little bit from your Fist of Fate, and then you add the Ring of Starless Skies, and then you add Close Quarters Combat Cap 1, Andariel's Visage, and then that is going to add up to about, for me personally, about 102% because I landed 2 Masterwork crits on my Andariels. But if you just had a higher rolled Fist of Fate there, then you would have more attack speed and you wouldn't have to land 2 Andariel's Visage rolls there, or if you had a lower roll on your Ring of Starless Skies, then you could, you could basically just add this up. You just want all of your cap 1 to be at 100%. You can also get to cap 1 very easily if you're just swapping to the build by adding Elixir of Advantage. That is 15% attack speed, and that also will give you some lucky hit chance as well. So if you're just swapping to the build, highly recommend slapping that on, and that will basically cap you out in attack speed 1. As you can see though, I am only at 75% attack speed in cap 2, and that is because I am using high velocity not on a amulet, so it's only giving me 20%, and my alchemical advantage is currently giving me 40% because it is rank 8. You can see that my alchemical is only rank 8 because on my amulet it is only giving me +5. But if I were to get just one more rank, you can see that currently it is 12 frames per barrage cast and my attack speed is 3.080. If I were to just get an extra rank, which would be 45% attack speed, boom, my frames go down to 11 and therefore I'm at 3.135. So that would be me hitting the next attack speed breakpoint, and getting 22% more attack speed is basically just not going to happen for me unless you are going to add like accelerating aspect or something, which just simply is not worth it. So what is the takeaway from all of this? Basically, you want to make sure you're at least hitting the attack speed cap in cap 1 because it's very easy to get 100% there. And then outside of that, you can try to hit it in reach 2 or in cap 2 and hit the next breakpoint either by just having a amulet with +6 to alchemical advantage or moving bursting volleys to the amulet. Don't really think that's worth it personally from playing with it, but if you move high velocity to the amulet, that will then cap you. And then you just have to move branching volleys, but I didn't really like that for clearing. So ideally you want to have an amulet with +6 ranks, but getting +5 ranks is still good because it does still increase your lucky hit chance. But once you're at the 12 frame breakpoint, getting more attack speed isn't actually going to help you until it's enough to break through to the 11 frame breakpoint, but it is still going to give you the lucky hit, in which case it is still helpful. This seems overly complicated, but obviously it is pretty easy to understand. Just make sure you're getting 100% in cap 1 honestly, and then you'll pretty much be within the 12 frame breakpoint as long as you just have alchemical advantage on your amulet almost at all. When it comes to the Paragon board, full credit to Mippy here and Sanctum. Pretty much they were kind of the same boards. If you guys are watching, you guys have like the same boards, but if you just move them around in the max roll thing and then like rotate them, they pretty much connect the exact same way, which is pretty funny. We've gotten to a point to where Paragon boards are so optimized that everybody kind of more or less has the same board. The only thing that I really changed, at least in the planner, is that I swapped the orientation of this and went for a little bit more max HP instead of the trap arm faster because I didn't think it was entirely necessary. But regardless, full thanks to them for the credit board. Credit for the Paragon board. That was just a yoink on my end because I'm not going to make it any better and I'm not going to make it worse just for the sake of making it different. First board, control. We max this out so we get damage of crowd controlled, which converts into multiplicative damage. And this is also just a 20x increase here. No witness, 39% increased damage. That is why we're using ultimate damage gems, by the way. This maths out more than damage over time because we have so much additive already with the damage with Dark Shroud shadows. So the ultimate damage there converts into a multi. Press our ultimate, 39% increase. That's really good. Then we have fluidity here. So you want to be using your agility skill every 6 seconds ideally, which is your shadow step, but you want to use that anyways to proc close quarters combat. And that is a damage increase. And then we just kind of grab some stuff here, some ultimate damage to convert into here, a little bit of damage reduction for free, and some more ultimate damage on the way. We grab Exploit Weakness, which is simply just increased damage and some max HP. We grab Deadly Ambush. This says crit damage, but actually it just works for all damage. Hopefully they patch it, because I hate using trap skills, but here we are. And then we use Bane for just a poison damage increase. If that's it, grab some damage crowd controlled, because that converts into a multi. And then Tracker, 40% increased duration on our poisons is real good. Cheap Shot, 25% damage a lot of the time when mobbing. Grab some DR and some more damage crowd controlled. And then Eldritch Bounty, 20% damage. That's probably the main reason that we use Poison Imbuement in addition to the Lucky Hit Chance modifiers. And then we go for Canny, which is just 10% increased damage as well, which is another reason why we're using Poison Imbuement. When it comes to actually playing with the build, there isn't anything you guys really need to know about in terms of min-maxing. You kind of just want to spam your buttons. I would recommend using all your buttons prior to pressing your ult. So if you like go into a pack, use Shadow Step, Poison Imbuement, throw down your Trap Smoke Grenade, and then press your ult, because pressing your ult will then reset the cooldown of everything else. So then the second that you need to press everything else, you then have an opportunity to press it again. You can pretty much just spam your Poison Imbuement key if you want. Make sure to Shadow Step on cooldown. Make sure to press your potion every 10 seconds, because that will proc trick attacks. unstable elixirs for increased damage. Otherwise, you kind of just spam like a monkey. Try not to move around too much in between attacks, because if you do that, you will lower your damage a little bit. Moving in between attacks obviously is good so that you can remain mobile, but if you move too much, you will lower your damage input or output, because all your damage is from just turreting out attacks, right? So if you're doing half as many attacks per second because you're moving around so much, then you're basically doing half as much damage because you're not proccing as much. Otherwise, it's probably one of the easier builds to play. It like feels like you're doing something because you're pressing so many buttons, but honestly, you're pretty much just holding right click and proccing lucky hits, and then everything is kind of just dying. Keep in mind, the build will feel a little doo-doo in terms of clear speed until you have pretty good gear. I did warn you on that though, but the boss damage is definitely going to make up for that. I would say this is where Rapid Fire kind of has an edge, and I'll kind of talk about Rapid Fire versus this build. Personally, I like Rapid Fire way more. I even said that in my Rapid Fire video. Clearing on Rapid Fire is so much fun. You just nuke elites, hit stuff for like 600-700 million. But Rapid Fire is a little less tanky. I'd say the clear speed is kind of comparable, but Rapid Fire just feels a little bit better. Rapid Fire might clear slightly faster, but the boss damage is definitely worse on Rapid Fire, and it is a bit more reliant on crowd controls. And like I said, it is squishier and harder to play. And Andariel's super brain dead to play. Spam your buttons. Everything will eventually die. If the build is set up poorly, the worst thing that could happen is that your damage output is a little low and you clear. T7's a little slower. Not a big deal, really. Once it's fully set up, though, obviously, you're going to be doing big damn, and it's pretty nice. If you were to ask me personally, I would prefer to play Rapid Fire just because I had more fun with it, but I do think Andariel's is overall a more versatile and more well-rounded package. But I do think it's possible with like perfect gear to make Rapid Fire overall better, but you might need like actually perfect gear to do it. I kind of want to revisit Rapid Fire, but I don't really have the gold or the gear to have it be as strong as my Andariel's right now if I wanted to swap back to it. I actually bricked my Rapid Fire Amulet, unfortunately. But if anybody has like the world's best Sky Hunter or something and wants to help me set that up, let me know, and I might swap back to Rapid Fire because I just had more fun with it personally. But Andariel's overall, I'd say stronger, probably the second strongest build in the game right now, next to Lightning Spear Sorcerer. And for bossing, it is a bit better as well. Kind of depends on perspective there, which one you decide to think is better. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the video, though. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you have questions, leave it down in the comments. Make sure to check out Mobalytics for the build. And I will be making Barb, Necro, and Druid builds pretty soon. So let me know what you guys want to see. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Peace.